We got over a hurricane. So just wishing you all a wonderful morning wherever you are. And for those of you that are joining live today, I'm going to be talking about the tea as I have it. Of course, there is so much that is going on as usual. And I chose one of the things that I suppose would be considered trending in the space that I exist in, and I wanted us to have just some brief conversation about wanting things to be different and how we get stuck in this altered reality of life where if we complain enough and if we bash other people enough or if we curse off other people or whatever it is, if we are somehow constantly complaining about how people are being or the experience that we're having, we kind of get stuck in thinking that if we do that, then things will be different. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're stuck. Sometimes we don't even realize that we are wanting things to be different. Sometimes we don't realize that the experience that we're having is just against a set of beliefs that other persons have, or maybe not. It's just the situation is what it is. And because we're getting so caught up in wanting things to be different, we get stuck. And in that stuckness is a whole heap of misery and suffering. Sometimes we don't realize that we're creating suffering for ourselves, we're creating pain for ourselves. But what is true is that's ultimately what you're doing, because sometimes persons that you are wanting to be different don't even know you, don't even know what you want, don't even know or have an opportunity to answer. And sometimes we spend too much of our time hoping and wishing things and people were different, and the negativity that we are circulating is really just affecting us. But I want to talk today about the blind spot that you may have to that happening, like you don't even realize that you're doing it, right? So I would have put up a topic. I'm on both Instagram and YouTube, and on both places I put up a topic. Stop wanting things to be different. And the reason why we get into wanting things to be different is because we are misaligned, right? And that misalignment is between what we believe and with reality. Most times we have expectations of people and of situations, and it doesn't line up with the reality. And what ends up happening, as I said, is we get caught in suffering, right? So we're going to talk all the things tea. And this morning in particular, I really wanted to use a trending example because I think that's where most people get their learning. So while I was at dinner this week, so this week for me was camp week. That by itself was a whole heap of tea right there. So, but we're not going to get into that. Maybe next week. So this week was summer camp week. I hosted a Girls in STEM summer camp in Jamaica with some partners of mine, and we weren't sure it was going to happen because of Hurricane Beryl. And it went forward, which was great. I was so happy that we were able to actually do it. So we went ahead. We had our summer camp, and I think the girls had a really great time. So I'm so happy. And one of the evenings, I was sitting down with some other young people, and we were, of course, I was getting the tea because that's all I do. I get tea. So I was getting the tea, and the tea for the week was about a young lady in Jamaica. Well, she's from here, but not living here, named Samantha Azan. And there was this whole conversation. First of all, they asked me, like, have you seen what's going on with Samantha Azan? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about, right? And in the midst of all the conversation about, have you heard about what's happening with Samantha Azan? There was just this discussion about this young lady who posted a video on TikTok about leaving Jamaica on a private jet. I guess it's her family's private jet, when the hurricane was coming. And there was just this whole heap of backlash that came from it, because clearly if people are talking about it, then, if it becomes the tea, then it's because there is something around it, whether it's news or it's gone viral or whatever. So then I was just examining, just the way that we process things like that. And I was like, why is it that we get stuck in setting expectations for things and people that is against the reality of, one, what has already happened, and two, what we can actually control? So that's where the topic came from, because I just get fascinated by how much, especially social media, has exaggerated the way that we want things to be different, right? So I want to spend some time with you guys this morning, and I really want you to dissect this with me, because maybe there are people and things in your life that you want to be different. I know for sure I wake up every day wanting something different, especially when I wake up in Jamaica. Just saying, right? Good tea this morning. This morning I'm having I guess it's my everyday tea time tea, which is my peppermint and lime or lemon and ginger with honey. Oh God, yes, so good. Especially after you've had a couple of margaritas the night before, it really, really helps with your stomach. So what I want to do is I want to first talk about just understanding what the conflict is that happens inside of us, because there's this nature that we have of wanting things to be different, and it's most jarring when we are focused on other people's behavior, right? And so when you think about the conflict that is happening inside of you, right? And many of us have been there. I was saying to you just now that every day I experience the wanting of something to be different. Maybe wishing somebody that you knew would behave differently. This happens a lot of time in relationships. Women especially wishing the man would be different, right? I know I've been doing that a lot with Honey Boo lately. Wishing someone you knew would behave differently, or that circumstances would change. Maybe you have coworkers that have annoying or toxic habits, or maybe a family member making certain choices, and it's really hard for people to meet our expectations, because remember, no, these are our expectations that we have of other people, and the root of that discomfort comes from a mismatch of our reality, right? The actual reality that we're living, and what we believe or what we hope that reality should be. Or even in the instance when I said to you about Jamaica, what I hope the reality of this island could be, right? So I'm going to give a couple of examples, because I think that this shows up in our lives in so many different ways. And many of us are stuck. It's a big breakthrough I had this week, when I was sat there talking about this Samantha Azan situation. I realized in that moment when we were talking about it, that there are so many things in my life that I complain about with other persons wanting it to be different. Simple things. Like I talk about the robot taxis a lot on Tea Time. And it's a simple example, but it's the same thing as I'm driving in Kingston, and no matter what it is I'm driving, I'm wishing that people would use the crosswalks instead of just starting to walk in front of the car. I'm wishing that when it's already a small, tiny road, that people wouldn't park their cars. I keep wanting people's behavior to be different. I keep wanting the government to do something different. I want them to fix the roads faster. I want them to do more about crime, because the scam of them there and them a take over everything. And I'm like, I know that we can blow this up. Why isn't the government, doing more? And what I got the breakthrough of this weekend was, what I was like, the same way that people wanted this young lady to respond differently, right? About what was happening with the hurricane, it's like, that's an expectation that you may have had for her. But she's a kid, she's a teenager, like she's a kid. Okay, so that's her reality. Her reality is that she's a teenager. And there is still going to be, well, that's no excuse. And but that's the reality. So why are we sat here in extraordinary judgment and thinking that by badgering the hell out of this person on social media and in the news, like newspaper, all right, article, I'm like, that we're going to create an actual difference in this child's life? Like we're going to give a lesson that is going to actually help her to see a path that makes sense? No, what we've taught her is that your way of expressing yourself is wrong and you are wrong, and therefore everything you do in your future life may be wrong. That's a whole belief. We don't know what belief we are creating in her mind that she's now going to take forward with her. We don't know what kind of stress was created by all of the comments. I didn't even see the comments, granted, because I was, of course, 10 days late to this excitement that was going on, which is fine. I don't mind not being in the cascas. Okay, the tea will come. The tea that needs to arrive at this table will come, right? But we spend so much time in that negativity that we miss the opportunity of education. I mean, at one point I was thinking maybe I should suggest that they should have, gone into the DMs and said something constructive. But what was more likely to happen is that persons would have been more likely to slip into this young woman's DMs and actually say something condescending and mean and make it more suffering for her so that they would feel better about themselves. Misaligning the expectations with the reality. Right? And here is Lysandra saying, completely agree, Stace, the badgering of a teenager was not right. It wasn't. And to what end? To what end? And as I sit here in this beautiful arena that I live in from time to time, right? Because I live in 2 countries. But as I sit here, there are so many things that we actually need to be worried about, that we need to be writing about and lobbying for, that we can actually make a difference about, that is actually creating suffering, right? And for those of you that are on IG, I'm getting a couple of messages about internet. So hopefully this works. Okay. So we're talking about the Samantha Azan situation and how it's a really great example of us not understanding the way that we get stuck in wanting things to be different and having our expectations and values placed on other people and not using that as an opportunity to be compassionate and to create learning, as opposed to creating hate and pain and more suffering. So we got to understand that the root of the discomfort comes from a mismatch between our reality and what we believe or hope the reality should be. The gap is where our frustration and pain begins to grow. And then what you'll notice is that we tend to cluster, we tend to join up. One of the things I always say is how my grandmother always tell me that misery love company, right? And so what will happen is you'll see somebody put something on TikTok. They might go back and take it down like this young lady did, right? Having now started to receive all this backlash. But people done grab it already and decide that, oh, now I'm going to just help to spew hate and just, horrible, my sense of entitlement and whatever else, right? So there were quite a few things in there that I thought could be unpacked. So let's talk about belief, because ultimately this backlash came from our beliefs, right? And this is actually going to answer that question, Katie. Katie asks, why do we act that way? It's based on our belief system, our value system, right? Our beliefs are essentially our practice thoughts. So we have thoughts that we practice over and over again. Hi, Kimoy. Practice thoughts that we act over and over again. So if we believe deep down that someone will never change, you desperately want them to change. Like you're just wanting them to change. You're wanting people to be different. You're wanting this one person. It could be one person. It could be a whole group of people. And you desperately want them to change. And you're in a lot of internal conflict and heartache about it. Now, one of the things that was really interesting about the experience of seeing this whole thing unpack with young Azan was, I don't think the backlash about her and to her was really about her, at least not from Jamaican people. And I can tell you why I say that. And this is my belief and it's based on my thoughts. So, please don't send no backlash. I'm just saying we can have a conversation about it, right? So I believe that the belief, there is a belief in Jamaica that people who live uptown, because you would have seen one of the news articles that came up said uptown Samantha Azan apology goes uptown, Jamaica is unfazed by whatever, so I think what I believe is really happening, so we're talking about beliefs, is that there is a belief in Jamaica that everybody that lives in a particular area of Kingston and everybody that is rich in Jamaica specifically, because I know the same people that will complain about the rich Jamaican people don't say nothing about the celebrities that they follow and love. They don't believe that they should behave a certain way. They believe they should behave a certain way. And they also believe that they are all entitled in how they feel and how they act. And they believe that it's wrong. And they believe that they shouldn't have as much. And that they're all mean and wicked. And, I believe that belief lives on this island. I think it lives on this island about uptown wealthy people. Okay? And I think that underlying belief about uptown and rich people in Jamaica, the families, as you'll sometimes hear it stated, I think that belief is a practiced thought and that it shapes the way that many Jamaicans see things. And so when somebody like this young lady is a teenager that's doing something that a teenager would do, the backlash against her is really coming from that belief that she should not, be there out there because she has private jet and our family have money and them entitled. And because of that entitlement, they cannot have compassion and they cannot create a true sense of what it means to not have, or they don't have any connection to what has happened on this island with the hurricane and people that are actually in suffering. I really think that is the underlying belief, and that is why so many of the Jamaican people went out there after this young lady and decide that they're going to make her the example of what uptown Jamaican and rich Jamaican people should know, that we do not appreciate your behavior. That's my belief. And it is a belief because it's a thought that I have had. It's not a practice thought, but it's just based on my observation. I now have that belief because I see conversations and I see all of it. Yeah, I see some persons here saying that they agree and that it can be very hypocritical. But I think, guys, it's a really great example of how we layer. In this instance, we talked about this one particular person, but it's the same belief. If you pick it up, this was my aha moment this week. This was my aha. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the tea. If we pick up that same example and think about how in our world, right, you desperately may want a person in your current life to change. You desperately may want your love partner to have a different way of behaving. It's the same thing. Just like how here I said that's how teenagers behave. Jay, you're saying that's how teenagers behave. They love social media, right? And then, you know, I really think that it's the same thing that you can apply to your own life, because the root of discomfort comes from that mismatch between the actual reality that we have and what we believe or hope that reality should be, right? So this frustration that we have built up in Jamaica, there's a frustration that has been built up, and us and them frustration, us being the regular general man, or how they think about it in their heads, and the uptown rich people. And it's a belief, guys. It's a thought that's been thought over and over again. And so the internal conflict that is creating suffering for you, and that you use to create examples of situations like what happened with Samantha Azan, is not about her. It's about you. It's about your belief and how that belief is creating suffering for you. And so what's really important is for you to recognize and adjust those beliefs, because ultimately that is where the joy in the experience that you're looking for is. Going on and writing newspaper articles and writing all these different negative posts, reposting about a situation with a child in it, and looking for there to be justification coming out of it and feeling right about it. Oh, yes, we are so right. Is not helping you, and it's not helping this young lady. Okay? So that's what happens. That's what happens, Katie, when you said, why are we like this? It's because there's a misalignment. So I'm not really interested in cussing off my people, because I understand categorically that we have come up in a system where our music, our media, our circumstances have painted pictures for us that have made us subscribe to these beliefs. And so many of us that end up subscribing to these beliefs are stuck in that scarcity and poverty and cannot become anything else except people who criticize uptown and rich. So here Jay says, when really abundance is available to everybody, right? Okay, so don't hate on the situation because of where this person comes from. You know how many videos I saw after Beryl of people in the hurricane, dancing in the hurricane and saying, oh, Beryl can't do nothing to me, and watch a Beryl nah, you know, and that none of those videos went viral. I don't think they would have been classified as uptown people doing those videos, making fun of the hurricane and making fun of the destruction that so many houses and lives and people experienced during the hurricane. No, but those videos didn't go viral. When them say, watch my house, watch my house, nothing happened to my house. But because you were not uptown and not showing a house in a particular place, or you know, you didn't have any of the other things going on, your video didn't go viral. But let a child, teenager, post something to social media showing that she has a particular life experience, and then everybody. So let's talk about, instead of exaggerating and blowing up and exhausting the pain and suffering for one person because of our misplaced beliefs, instead of talking about that, why don't we talk about practicing new beliefs? Why don't we look at how we change our beliefs to better match our desires? And it actually requires us to do some of that internal work. You got to, first of all, be really connected to yourself in realizing that there is a bandwagonist thing going on that's going on a negative pathway, and I'm not going to jump on that. So you have to identify, in that doing so, you'd be identifying what you truly believe. And then you would consciously choose beliefs that align more closely with what you hope to achieve or experience. Let's do that instead. So in this instance, right, with the example that I'm using, the public held a belief about how the teenager should have behaved during a crisis, which didn't align with her actions in the video, or her words in the video, and did not align with their thought process about how uptown people should behave. And this mismatch in the actual situation and the belief led to widespread disappointment, rage, anger, etc. But instead of stepping down, because that's what y'all did, step down into public shaming and fostering, like punishment almost, right? Which likely did very little to educate the young woman about the impact of her words, but instead caused additional emotional distress. Instead of doing that, it's more about, let's foster an environment for learning or understanding. And so the opportunity that existed there was one for empathy and sensitivity. And it would have allowed us to lean into a conversation about the power of our words, especially in times of collective crisis. Discussions, instead of having a headline in our today that reads, Jamaicans unfazed by Samantha Azan's remorse, right? And starting out talking about uptown Jamaican. Samantha Azan continues to be the center of controversy. Instead of going down that road, right? How about focusing on understanding different perspectives and speaking to the responsibility that we have when we're using our platforms that come with public expression, especially on social media? How about choosing to create a language or a conversation about empowerment and how the woman's voice is one that can be used to empower, and using the platform that is the media, that is adult, to lift the conversation, as opposed to take it further into a downward spiral and give the exact example of why people talk about Jamaicans when they do in a negative way. That's why they do it. So I'm going to share with you guys the intention card that I thought was applicable for this discussion, right? There's a card in the deck that speaks about compassion. And compassion is a funny thing because Jamaicans, we have a lot of terms in Jamaica now. I can hear somebody saying this right now. Me not sorry for you. You know, that's another Jamaican term. Me not sorry for you. When you say things like that, it means that you don't have, or you are not interested in creating or sharing compassion. So this intention card says, I am compassion, right? I am compassion. And the affirmation says, I show genuine care and concern for another's well-being, and I show support towards them with their best interest at heart. I'm going to read it again. I show genuine care and concern for another's well-being and show support towards them with their best interest at heart. Not one of these persons who were out there dragging that young lady's name through the mud and making it worse for her, had any care or concern about her well-being. And I know that when I say that, those same persons are going to say, well, Stacey, she never cared about hurricane people. You don't know that. You actually do not know that. And in the same way that you would say that about her and that would go viral, and the same man and woman them were out there that were not uptown or had a jet sitting waiting on the runway or whatever, the same way that they were out there playing in the wind and dancing to, I saw the one with Michael Jackson. There were so many different videos. You could say the same thing while people in St. Elizabeth are homeless. But no, that's not what we did. So we think about compassion, and it's not just a one-off application where it applies to some people and it don't apply to others. You want to give that constructive feedback instead of attacking, shaming. You want to provide calm, constructive feedback to help the individuals understand the broader implications of their actions. You want to encourage reflection, like I'm encouraging you all to reflect right now. Encourage reflection. Look at how your actions or words might be perceived by others, especially in sensitive situations. And last but certainly not least, you want to promote empathy. You want to use incidents to promote empathy and highlight how different people respond to different things. Right? So this is how we transition towards practicing new beliefs. And the one final point I want to leave before I wrap up, it always feels like I come on, guys, and then I just almost have to finish too soon. I could stand here talking forever. My God. The next thing is really about acceptance, right? Acceptance does not mean giving up on change. Okay? When you're faced with reality of a situation and you feel that mismatch of alignment, you feel that suffering, you feel that thing that says to you, boy, this don't feel so good right now, and I wish it was different, and I wish people's behavior was different. When you start to have that experience, right, it's now a time for you to understand and acknowledge that this is how things are currently. And it may not be as you wish them to be, but this is what it is. And from this place of acceptance, you can actually make far more clear decisions about how to respond or which actions to take next. Accepting the reality often brings on a sense of peace that makes necessary actions more effective and less emotionally charged. Because when you lead with that emotional charge, you're actually not going to get the outcome that you want, because the emotional charge is not going to be aligned with what you actually want. The emotional charge is going to be aligned with the things that you don't want. And you know what is true? You get what you want and you get what you don't want based on where you place your attention. It comes right back to that, guys. We talk about it every week. Okay? So as we wrap up today's show, right, I really want us to remember that you want to learn to navigate your reactions. You want to learn to navigate your reactions and contribute positively to discussions, even in challenging situations. Okay? Especially in the age of instant digital communication, where words and videos can go viral and attract widespread scrutiny. You really want to make sure that you're using some of these strategies that we discussed to align your beliefs with compassion and understanding, ultimately reducing the collective suffering that would be created. All right. So guys, that's my time. I want to thank you so much for joining Tea Time today, guys. Remember to follow my page if you're not already following. If you're on YouTube, I'm on YouTube with these videos and the shorts. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just look up, I'm Stacey Hines. I am there. And of course, I'll be posting this to my feed on Instagram. So if you know somebody, and you should share it with them, because let me tell you something, guys, we have got to adjust our mindsets and our behavior so that we can create more collective future movement and less collective suffering. All right. I'm here on Saturday mornings between 8 and 9, sometimes 9:30. So please look out for me and tune in. Take care, everybody. Until next week. Thanks, Kimoy. Kimoy says this is powerful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.